members who are going to give you an introduction to Shirley and tell you a little bit about their experiences with her.
Let's see if I can get this where. Can everybody hear that all right?
No.
No? Hi. Is that better?
No.
That was all.
You might have to hold it.
I can hold it.
It seems to work better when you talk.
Is this better?
No.
That's not good.
Hello. Thank you. My name is Patrick Anderson. I'm delighted to be here to help introduce our honoree this evening. I've had the pleasure of knowing Shirley for about 18 years now. We first met when I appeared at the Huntington back in 1990, having recently retired to check out the fall plant sale. I chatted with John Furman, who would soon become a dear friend, and I asked him how one went about volunteering at the Huntington. He got this wicked gleam in his eye, which I later realized signified, oh boy, fresh meat. And he immediately dragged me over to meet Shirley. The rest is history. For the next year or so, I spent every Wednesday at the potting bench in the nursery, who is a natural teacher. She has a great hands-on approach to sharing her wealth of knowledge, and I learned more in that year than in a whole college horticultural program. Before I knew it, it was time for my first mother of all plant sales. I had no idea what I was in for. Shirley is proud of saying that she exploits her volunteers shamelessly. And I didn't know what that meant until the days leading up to the sale. All of the discipline of a drill sergeant, but everything was done in such a way and with that sweet smile that you just went along with whatever it was she wanted you to do. Over the years, some of us got brave enough to question the way the sale was laid out, or why the plants had to be arranged in a certain way. And my favorite, I still don't understand why we have to organize the herbs by botanical name. Susie Homegartner is not going to look for basil under O. But you soon learned not to question Mistress Shirley. The rows have to go this way, not that way. Never mind that all the rows are going to be demolished 5 minutes after the stampede starts. Eventually, I learned the secret. Smile, agree, do it the way she wants, and then change it when she moves on to the next process. And woe to the hapless volunteer who moves the plant out of the holding area without a label on it. She knows exactly how she wants everything, and the formula works. Her ability to keep all the balls in the air and keep the sale running smoothly is nothing short of inspiring, and the Huntington has become the model of how a plant sale should be run. By the time I met Shirley, she had already come out of the hinterlands of Orange County and gone from domestic goddess to crazy plant lady. I happily joined her circle of crazy plant people, and my life hasn't been the same. I've had the pleasure of traveling with Shirley, including co-leading a couple of tours with her, where her teaching background and talent for herding people around came in very handy. She has a natural sense of adventure and a great enthusiasm for new experiences. In Italy, in Ireland, and elsewhere, she has been the ideal traveling companion, but I always come home with a bruised and sore arm from being grabbed or poked so many times. Look, did you see that? Did you see that? We also share a love of music, especially opera. We've spent many evenings together at the Chandler, where her enjoyment is complete, although with much more grabbing and poking, and wasn't that wonderful? And it always is, made all the more wonderful by seeing it through her excited eyes. For those of us who love Shirley, we also have to accept her shortcomings. Well, maybe that's not the wrong word.
Yeah.
She obstinately refuses to have a working television in her house. So if you want to discuss last Sunday's episode of Desperate Housewives, you're out of luck. You'd think just the title alone would get her to watch it. She is also, to put it kindly, technologically challenged. She can remember the botanical name of any plant she's ever seen, but when it comes to turning on a computer, she's lost. If you rely on email as a means of communication, communication. You will never hear from Shirley again. And she's been regaling us with stories tonight of her new digital camera that she couldn't figure out what to do when it said it was out of film. And have you seen her car? If you're going anywhere with Shirley, you better drive. You ride with her at your own peril. There are others here tonight who have known and loved Shirley even longer than I have, and who have many more stories to share, so I'll yield the podium to them. I just want to say that it has been a delight to have this crazy woman in my life. Shirley, I'm honored to be here to share this night with you.
Technologically challenged.
Thank you. It's working, just try
Okay,
to.
okay. Thank you, Pat. I too am very honored to be here. My name is Margaret Carlberg, and I am technically challenged as well. Will do my best here at the microphone with my soft voice. I have known Shirley longer than probably anybody in this room, including her son. We met in 1968 when we were in NAUW, University Women, while our kids were little. Shirley was a substitute fifth grade teacher, knowing all the wonderful stories of history. I was a substitute chemistry teacher, and when we got involved with a gourmet group, we probably cooked 400 meals together once a month with a group of 24 people, still going. We dozens and dozens of recipes from the Huntington here, tested those. We started playing in the garden together in about 1974 when the Huntington Beach Public Library, designed by Dion Mitra, was really thought we should have stories of literature visible for people to see what a mulberry tree looked like for the children to play ring around a mulberry bush and Shakespeare's wonderful flowers and all that. And so the city said if we find the garden, maybe we could plant it. Well, she's probably going to tell some of these stories. We did indeed, in 1972 or 3, start working in the garden. I brought some experience from horticulture in my family and a love of plants. And Shirley's stories were just absolutely wonderful. I interviewed her when she decided to go back to college and get another career, which I'm telling you about, landscape design and architecture and horticulture and all those good things.
Because
I was a chemistry lab.
But she started
Me not a career but a passion by working with her as a volunteer in
herb garden here at the Huntington.
when the matter needed some weeding, and I found out what a good diet was, and working with students have died, gotten involved with natural dyeing. My shawl up here to display the dyes from 2007. So it's a passion that has just enriched my life, just as knowing Shirley has. With her, whenever I have questions or problems with plants, I would always turn to her. And the principal, the head of the school where I've been teaching for 29 years, asked me to come and give a commendation as an outsider to the Art Society here, but knowing that our landscape architect from Conley High School was being honored. Sister Francine wanted me to share this. The faculty, students, and parents appreciate the artistic landscape designs prepared for Horticulture High School in Anaheim, California by Shirley. Her frequent advice since 1991 and her expert plant selections have greatly improved the appearance and environment of the campus. And there's a picture of the 450-foot Broadway Street facade that is indeed has gone up every year since it has improved that environment, just as Shirley has in many, many ways. Traveling with her and being with her, being a good friend, has enriched my life for more than 40 years now. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Tom Ruth, and I have to say a few words about Shirley. We'll start this over again. I have to say a few words about Shirley. I have to take you back to a very dark time when Shirley lived behind the orange curtain. Actually, we both lived in Orange County at that point, and that was 1977. And you may be familiar with the series, The Real Housewives of Orange County. If they had met Shirley, it would have been the Unreal Housewives of Orange County. We actually met in the Orange County Rose Society, and she was a member too of the Orange County Herb Society. And were you a member of the Orange County Daily Society? I'm sure. We came to know each other then, and we made fast friends when we came to the Huntington to go to John McGregor's class on old roses, which was very PC at the time. And I mean, by PC, that was pre-Claire. And that's where we both learned a whole lot about old roses, and we got to be fast friends with Margaret and many other great people. And we've maintained a fantastic friendship since. I have been amongst the slaves who worked the plant sale for many years. We had a great time. We had a great time, and it wasn't really altruistic. It was because volunteers got first choice. Shirley was a great inspiration because she got the 3 boys into school. She went back into school to learn landscape architecture and a substantial place in the plant world in Los Angeles. I love her a lot, and I'm glad she lives near Pasadena because it's a lot easier than going down to Orange County to visit. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, now it's my turn to deal with this. So, Shirley. Bart couldn't be here. So if you'd like to come up here.
Your glasses.
And I mean that. With our plaque for outstanding contribution to horticulture for the year 2008. Of course, it's not just this year, it's going back many, 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 many years. Congratulations. Thank you very much, Kathy, and thank you all of you for coming here. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you very much, Kathy, and thank you all of you for coming here. I'm overwhelmed. And I was asked to explain how an old school teacher could end up as a horticulturist, I should say. This is peculiar. Yeah. Anyone have a secret to it?
We hear you. We can hear
Oh,
you.
you can hear me? Okay, very good. So I said, what am I supposed to talk about?
If I could get up and talk about plants,
I'd be very comfortable. But when they said,
no,
tell us
how you got into horticulture.
so I entitled it Playing
In the dirt, you call that a job.
Job. And it's in 4 chapters. The first one is
Is in my childhood growing Catholic,
as a small child and
complaining that there was nothing
to do while
I was at my
uncle's
aunt.
house one day.
Shirley, put her away.
Just put it away. Come on.
I got a lot without it.
It's a pain.
Oh, start over again? Well, as a small child,
There we go.
when I was at my aunt and uncle's house one day with my cousin, we were complaining that there was nothing to do. You know, we were bored and there was nothing to do. And my aunt came out and said, well then, why don't you two just make a nice little garden for the Blessed Mother? And so my cousin and I were given a little statue of Mary and a trowel, and we were sent to an area on the side of the house to do this. We had great fun breaking off branches from the plants around the house and sticking them in the dirt, the trees and shrubs, and then we gathered tiny little pebbles to make paths. And we grabbed flowers off the bushes all around there, and we scattered those all around. And so we're pretty proud of ourselves. And well, then, of course, we did get in a little bit into throwing dirt around, but he started. And after a while, my aunt came to the door, and she looked out, and she said, Holy Mother of God. Look at that. So we turned around, and we thought she made an appearance. Down, look at our garden. And then she went on and just, we thought we were proud of our work, but then our first experience of finding joy in the garden soon fizzled. We found out she was really kind of upset with us for the mess we made, and she told my mom. My mom was not amused. However, growing up back east, and I didn't do much gardening after that. Growing up back east, there were fields and there were woods all around. Whereas I got older, I could go and explore and gather the wildflowers and bring them back. And I was always happy when I was with nature, with the birds and the butterflies and the plants. It was just a wonderful way to grow up. Nature was all around me, and I loved it. Well, then fast forwarding to early adulthood, my teen years were spent doing a lot of babysitting. So it was very easy for me to think of becoming a nursery school teacher because I got along well with kids. We were always at the same mental age. The curriculum of child development and early education at the University of Rhode Island was in the College of Home Economics. And that required at least 2 years of taking food and nutrition courses. So at that point, as a co-ed, I was at least 2 days a week found me in a spotless, starched white dress, white hose, white shoes, where not even a speck of dirt could be found anywhere near me. And I may have heard of horticulture at that time, I don't really remember, but it was in the program of agriculture, and I am a little embarrassed to admit that in those days, my girlfriends and I wouldn't even consider even dating an Aggie. They wore dungarees and t-shirts, unlike the other guys who wore khaki pants and plaid shirts. So they were just totally unacceptable. After college, I did become a teacher, at first nursery school and then later 5th grade. And when I was teaching 5th grade and all about colonial history back east and the Native American culture, and I learned how they used plants in their more simple lifestyle. I found that fascinating, and that was probably what started my interest in herbs and other plants that had a use. So I started a nature trail that was kind of popular back in those days, and the kids loved making it, and we used the plants that we put in the plants that were used by the early colonial people, and also had little handmade signs on how they were used. Well, then the babies started coming along, and I became a stay-at-home housewife and mother. When we moved to California in 1968, I was really excited about seeing all of these plants that I had only read about. And I was a great reader of Edith Hamilton. You may remember she was quite popular in the 70s, and all the classical mythology. I loved that, having taken Latin in high school. And I just remembered all those stories of the gods and goddesses and everything else. And luckily, I'd found a very good friend, Margaret Carlbert, who grew up in the Howard family here in California. She knew all these plants. So whenever we were together, she would point to something and say, oh, that was an olive tree. An olive tree. Oh my God, that's sacred to Athena, you know. And then she'd find out a myrtle shrub or a laurel shrub. Oh, remember the story about Daphne and Apollo? She was turned into that plant. And she was very patient and she listened quietly to all the story. I was very excited to see these plants that I had only read about. Well, when I thought the stories were kind of boring maybe to other people, but a short time later, Huntington Beach was about to build a new library in Central Park, as Margaret has already mentioned. And they suggested that maybe it would be nice to have the landscaping around the library chosen from plants that were mentioned in literature. So Margaret set up a meeting with Rick Katzmeyer, who was the landscape architect then, and he thought it was a great idea, but those plants weren't appropriate necessarily for surrounding the library, so he set aside this little area, probably about the size of this area here, and he said, why don't you, AUW, through the American Association of University Women that we're both members of, why don't you ladies you can put in a garden there and do whatever you want. And he was a wonderful man, and matter of fact, he inspired me later to go on and to study landscape architecture. So I could grow up to be like Rick, although he was probably 20 years younger than me at the time. Before then, I learned about the ornamental horticulture program at Orange Coast College. And so the two of us were going to be planning this public garden. I better learn more about plants and how to use them. So I enrolled in the program. Now this began several years of great fun for me and learning. Now, of course, for the school, I had to buy some t-shirts and dungarees, now called jeans, and was actually wearing those, and no more polyester pantsuits for me. My sons, then in junior high and in high school, were somewhat embarrassed when I would come home from school, all excited because guess what? I learned to drive a tractor. I learned to drive a bat. I learned to operate a rototiller, drive a backhoe. And they just roll their eyes and yawn. And then I also learned a whole new vocabulary of words used to express vexation, which really does when used, however, infrequently at home. Well, Margaret and I went out to design the Literary Heritage Garden, which got the approval of the city and the library staff, and our branch of AUW raised the money to fund and then later to maintain the project. We were all very proud of that garden. We gave programs and tours regularly, and schools took the classes there to see the plants that they had read about. There were 8 beds, each devoted to plants from a different genre of literature. This included not only classical mythology, but English literature, children's literature, American literature and folklore, Asian literature, European literature, and the Bible. Each plant was identified with a quotation or description of where it was mentioned. The garden existed for over 10 years, but then when the library needed to expand it to build an auditorium, it was demolished. When was that, about 8 or 9 years ago, I think? However, when it was first being planted, we were unable to obtain certain old roses at local nurseries. And Margaret remembered this man who once worked with her uncle at Rose Hills and was very knowledgeable about old roses. So he was working at a place called the Huntington Drain Library, but we were putting in the garden in the library. So we contacted John McGregor and set up an appointment for us to meet. He was very helpful and told us where to obtain the old roses that we needed. Well, after several visits, because we had to get back home before our kids got home from school, so we came up 3 or 4 times, and we said, John, can we pay you for this? And he said, oh, no, that's what he's very generous. That's what we do here at the Huntington. However, he did add, did you say you've taken a course in propagation? Perhaps you could help me propagate some plants for this new plant sale that we just started. So Margaret and I became one of the first regular nursery volunteers. And we also worked at the plant sale held in the parking lot as well. Well, chapter 4, kids growing up and going back to work. A few years later, Myron Kimnack, the director of the Botanical Center, called me and said, I hear you have a family at home in Orange County, and you do substitute teaching. You come up here and volunteer, and you're studying landscape architecture at night. You must be pretty well organized. And I said, well, I guess. And he said, this plant sale has grown out of hand, and you need someone to organize it. It would just be a few hours a week. Right before the sale, and then it might be a little more. Do you think you could do that? I guess. So he hired me as an outside contractor in December of 1978. I had no regular hours, which was great, and just billed him for the time spent on the sale. Having recently taken architectural drafting, it was easy to draw up a plan for the sale, indicating how many tables were needed and where they were to be placed. This reduced a lot of the confusion. That first sale that I managed was in 1979, so it's hard to believe that next year will be my 30th sale. Gradually, the sale grew in popularity and size. 8 hours a week became 10 hours a week, and then 20 hours a week as we grew more plants in our own nursery. We were even given a special area in the greenhouse to do so. We then needed to hire someone to actually propagate more plants than I would have time for, along with our volunteers, to meet the growing demand. And luckily, a former Orange Coast College classmate of mine, Mary Naylor, had moved up here coincidentally, and so she was hired. The sale was moved to the Pasadena Center because of the complaints from our neighbors, and then it grew the center and was moved back here with an enlarged parking lot. Now, when John left, I was asked to curate the herb garden with another additional 10 hours a week and become a regular staff member. Luckily for me, the housing market went through a depression in '91, and I was to obtain a little house up here and close by. My children were all grown up by that time, so I could live up here during the week and save time and, thankfully, gas by living up here during the week. But soon it was necessary to devote all of my time to the plant sale. We had a fall sale, weekend sales, and second Thursday garden talks and sales. So now, although there is too much paperwork, which I'm not very good at, I still get to do a little what I love best, and that is working at the benches, propagating and repotting the many wonderful plants we grow, getting my hands in the dirt, or rather the potting soil, which is the best part of all of my job. Many years ago, when I tried to explain to my mother what I did as a horticulturist, she understood the landscape architect part, because my dad was a contractor, but she never had heard of a horticulturist, couldn't imagine what I did. So I told her how we take cuttings and we stick them in the dirt or in the potting soil, and then as they get bigger, we repot them some more, and she thought that must be very boring, and I said, no, not at all. I said, it's so wonderful, you know, you're potting it up, and especially on a hot day, and you feel the soil in your hands, and it's cool, and it's moist, and it's just wonderful. And she looked at me and she said, dirt? You're still playing in the dirt. To which I replied, yes, Mom, I'm really lucky. Thank you very much.
It's very Virginia.
Gosh, I love them. Woo! I love plants. Thank you.
Oh. Yeah, Virginia.
Yeah, quite the station.
Gonna have to hire a limo to get it home.